Leaders of Ireland's black community have called on the government to take action to end racism following a rise in racist incidents. Taxi drivers have said that tempers are flaring following the death of a driver who was assaulted in Dublin City early Monday morning.
Ola Oladeru has been in Ireland for 30 years and says he was Dublin's first Nigerian taxi driver. He was a close friend of taxi driver Moses Anyewole, who was assaulted while working and died from his injuries. Ola says drivers are angry and worried.
There is feeling of fear, and there are other expressing feelings of anger. All the drivers are worried. All our wives are worried. Everybody is worried, not just the Africans alone.
While it's not believed the attack on Moses was racially motivated, black taxi drivers are regularly the subject of racist remarks.
When they flag you down on the street and they see that as a black man, they slam the door and tell you in a very, very bad way that you should go back to your country, hop off, they don't need you here.
Black community leaders say immigrants here are under siege and that the number of racist attacks is rising.
There was an increase in racist incidents being reported to us since 2008 December, when the economic crisis really began to take hold. And then we saw the NCCRI and other bodies, fold up. We would like to see the government take a more solid stand in terms of incidents which are of a racist nature.
The National Action Plan on Racism was published in 2005, and the group today expressed their anger that nothing has been done about it since.
The community leaders who gathered in Dublin today were anxious to point out that they don't believe Ireland is a racist country, but that no incidents of racism should be tolerated.
The drivers who worked with Moses said they are planning to organise a protest march in his honour, calling for more protection for taxi drivers. Katrina Perry, RTE News, Dublin.
We're joined here in studio by Salome Bugwa, who is Chief Executive of the organisation Kidwa, which campaigns on behalf of immigrants here. You're welcome to the programme, Salome. Now, you've spoken today about members of the immigrant community here being under siege, feeling under siege in the country which is now their home.
Absolutely. I just actually want to reinforce very much that Ireland is our country. I mean, in particular, in all people who are probably from African descent who live here now. So that should be taken very clearly that we feel very Irish, but we also want to be made to feel that way. The whole issue of racism has been a problem for a long time in Ireland, and in particular my organisation Akidwa since 2001, with other groups have been campaigning and challenging this issue.
But you're saying, and you think it's because of the economic downturn, the situation has become markedly more serious and the situation has got worse in recent times.
That could be one of the factors, but actually in 2005, when the National Action Plan to address racism was developed, there were also other line of researches that were carried along, and it did show very well that people from the African community or African descent experience more racism or more racist attitude are directed towards black African people. So what is actually being seen this week, because we've had a lot of issues happening this week, with the mayor of Ness, with his comment, which actually reinforces those stereotypes and attitude people have towards especially black people, which make it very, very much of a big problem when we go to people who are walking on the street or who are living within the communities.
In terms, though, particularly of violent attacks, how can you be sure they're racially motivated, really, is what I'm wondering, particularly for someone like taxi drivers of all colours and races, I imagine, might feel at times vulnerable when they're out doing their job at certain times of the day or night in certain places.
Absolutely. Most of the taxi drivers and people even on the street or people when they attacked, they say it's actually the language that goes with the attack, being called nigger, being told to go back to your countries, and even if you're going to ask for money and you have carried a person as a taxi driver, you need to be paid just like any other person. But the attack that goes with that is maybe a name calling, which is actually racially, verbally and racial.
So immigrants that are particularly vulnerable are, well, for starters, taxi drivers, others working in particular types of jobs?
Yeah, could even people who are working working within the health sector, some of them, but even in all sectors, people have actually reported to our organization, especially the women that we work with, of various racist attitude and abuse that they would get,
and
when they are working.
Are people encountering this who've never encountered it before?
Yes, like for example, we gave an example of a woman who was attacked in Cork. This woman is actually an African woman herself, and she's been living in Cork for a long time, a while now. She's an Irish herself, although from African descent, and she was actually attacked in September when she was going to pick her children from school.
Physically attacked.
Physically attacked. This had never happened before. So I really don't know what is fueling this. But what we are calling for from the black community is the political leadership of our own government. There are many organizations and groups which are working on the issue of racism, and they've been there for a long time. But not unless we get that political leadership and will to address the issue of racism, it will not go away.
But do you have practical suggestions for how this might be tackled?
Absolutely, like speaking out and naming it out. Even after the mayor made his comment, we've not seen many politicians or political leaders coming out to condemn him or to challenge what he said. So it's acceptable. If our leaders are not speaking out, if they're not saying anything, it's acceptable within the community. We are actually asking the government to strengthen its Incitement to Hatred Act of 1989, which is actually still very poor, and it needs to be strengthened.
Do you think there's also a case, though, and I want to be careful how I put this, but there's a case maybe for a more open discussion about the concerns that people have, perhaps about changes in the nature of their communities, about people arriving from other countries to live here, that we need to maybe be more open about that?
Absolutely. That one we would welcome very much, because you would find that even when they are, let's say even people who are brought here to work, when they are being brought, there are occasions where they are going to be prepared that there are people who are coming to live in that location. We need actually people to be prepared more, but not unless we get a lot of awareness raising, education and training in all levels, because racism is not only within the schools or within one particular area. Racism is everywhere. It's embedded in our own community. We need a lot of awareness raising and training, to everybody to understand the issues of diversity and taking it from that perspective. So it's very important we tackle it from more angles. From legislative point of view, that we need laws and policies that actually address the issue of racism. We also need that awareness raising, but mostly speaking out and condemning it. Racism should not be around in Ireland, and it should not allow it to continue. It should be taken seriously, and from the top level, from the political leader, we really need that help.
Okay, Salome Bugwa, thanks very much indeed for talking to us.
You're welcome. Thank you.